Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, pollution. I know it's a massive topic for your ICSE exams, and it can feel like, where do I even start? But hey, don't worry. We're going to break it all down for you, the big problems and, even better, the science-backed solutions.
So let's start with something you do every day. Ever really thought about it? You know, the drive to school, or just throwing a load of laundry in the wash. Seems pretty simple, right? But what's the hidden environmental price tag on those things? That's what we're digging into today, how our everyday lives actually feed into the pollution problem and what science tells us we can do about it.
All right, first things first. We have to be on the same page. What is pollution, really? Well, at its most basic, it's just introducing harmful stuff into the environment. And that harmful stuff, we call them pollutants. You can think of them as the bad guys in this story. And they come from everywhere. Factory waste, the exhaust from your car, even the noise from a construction site.
Okay, so to get a real handle on this, especially for your exams, we need to split waste into two big categories. On one hand, you've got biodegradable waste. This is the stuff that nature can break down and reclaim, like paper or leftover vegetable peels. But then, you've got the non-biodegradable stuff. This is the real problem maker. It can't be broken down naturally. We're talking about things like plastics, glass, and nasty pesticides like DDT that just stick around for a very, very long time.
All right, basics are covered. Now let's get into the real world with our first case study. We're looking up at the air we breathe and focusing on one of the biggest culprits out there, cars. Yep, vehicular pollution is a huge deal, right up there with industrial smokestacks and burning garbage.
So when you look at cars, it really comes down to a fuel duel, petrol versus CNG, or compressed natural gas. Now, petrol is what we've used for ages. It's the classic choice, but it's also a huge source of pollution. CNG, on the other hand, is the cleaner-burning challenger. Why? Well, a big part of it is its higher octane rating, which just means it burns way more efficiently inside the engine.
Now, this is where it gets interesting. There's a bit of a trade-off. If you look at the numbers, petrol engines give you a little more power, a little more torque, basically a tiny bit more get up and go when you hit the gas, but look how small that difference is. It's barely noticeable. So you have to ask yourself, is that tiny extra bit of power really worth the massive cost to our environment? And boom, here's your answer. This chart just lays it all out. The benefit of switching to CNG is, well, it's huge. An 81% drop in carbon monoxide, that's poisonous stuff, and a 77% reduction in hydrocarbons. I mean, those numbers are just incredible. We're talking about massive cuts to the exact pollutants that cause things like smog and even acid rain.
So the takeaway here is pretty simple, and the science backs it up completely. CNG is just a cleaner fuel. It burns more completely, and that means way fewer nasty pollutants get pumped into the air we breathe. This is a perfect example of a control measure you'll need to know.
Okay, so we've talked about the air. Now let's switch gears and talk about our water. For our second case study, we're diving into water pollution, and we're looking at something pretty much all of us use every single day, detergents. This stuff, coming from our homes and from factories, is a huge source of water pollution, along with things like untreated sewage and oil spills. What you're seeing here is basically a map of how water moves through a big detergent factory. And you can see that at pretty much every single step, from making the product to just cleaning the machines, it's creating wastewater. All of that dirty water eventually flows together into one big stream that, well, has to be cleaned up before it can go back into a river or the ocean. And here is where the alarm bells start ringing. See, we measure how polluted this water is using something called chemical oxygen demand, or code for short. Just think of it as a pollution score. The legal limit for this score is 1100, but the wastewater coming out of this factory, it's hitting an average of almost 5,000. That is, wow, over 4 times the legal limit. This isn't just a little polluted, it's dangerously polluted.
So the obvious solution would be to use our standard treatment method, right? We have these helpful little microorganisms that are supposed to just eat up the pollution. But here's the crazy part. The researchers discovered that the very things that make detergents work, the anti-phoning agents and enzymes, were actually poisoning those little microbes. So the system designed to clean the water completely fails. The stuff in the wastewater is killing the cure.
So, what do you do when your go-to solution fails? You can't just dump the polluted water. Well, this is where the researchers got clever. They turned from biology to chemistry to forge a new path.
And what they came up with was this really effective chemical process. It works in a few simple steps.
First, you gather all the wastewater and mix it up. Then you add a special chemical, this is the magic part, called coagulation, that makes all the tiny pollution particles start clumping together. After that, you give it a gentle stir, and those little clumps form even bigger clumps, called flocks. And because these flocks are heavy, they just sink right to the bottom, leaving much cleaner water at the top. Simple, but brilliant.
And the result? How well did it work? It removed a whopping 79% of that COD, that pollution score we were talking about. That's a huge deal. This one chemical process was enough to take that dangerously polluted water and bring it all the way back down to within the legal, safe limits.
So let's pull all of this together. What are the big takeaways for you? The main thing is that fighting pollution isn't about just one magic bullet. It's a huge team effort, right? We've got the techie solutions we just looked at, like using cleaner fuels and clever water treatments, but it's also about the big picture stuff, like choosing organic farming to protect our soil, banning single-use plastics to tackle that non-biodegradable waste, and getting behind big national efforts like the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan.
Okay, so what we've seen today is that the solutions are out there. The science exists, the engineering is possible, we can control pollution. So that leaves us with one last really important question, and this one is for you. We've seen the science, so what's our role? What are the individual choices we can make every day to help build that cleaner tomorrow?